Welcome. Welcome to Poetry Flash in Berkeley, California. I'm Joyce Jenkins. Today we are pleased to present Kelly Russell, Agodon, and Sharon Dolin. Books for this reading are available at bookshop.org/shop/poetryflash, and purchases there will help support this series. The link in the chat is in the chat box. When you get there to the site, click on View All for a better look at the books, all of the featured books from our series. To the best of our technical ability, and probably yours, you were muted on entry. Please stay muted. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Poetry Flash YouTube channel and Facebook page. At the end, when the program ends, unmute yourself and we'll keep the Zoom on so those who are with us live can ask a question or say hello. Visit poetryflash.org to check out our interviews, reviews, poems, and more, and to see news about upcoming events all over California, to receive emails about future Poetry Flash readings, both online and in person, because there's going to be a mix from now on, online on Zoom and in person. Join our mailing list at poetryflash.org. Now to begin. Kelly Russell Agodon's fourth poetry collection is Dialogues with Rising Tides. This book reads like a day-in-the-life video of our anxious selves, with dark wit, glimpses of science, middle seats on airplanes, trauma, suicide, climate instability, environmental damage, butterflies, volcanoes, dead whales, and the ever-present plastic island out there in the ocean. Diane Seuss says, "This is the book I need right here, right now, as the fires burn and the tides rise." Kelly Russell Agodon's poetry books include Hourglass Museum, a finalist for the Washington State Book Awards. She's co-author of Everything is Writable, 240 writing prompts from Two Sylvia's Press, and The Daily Poet, day-by-day prompts for your writing practice. She teaches at Pacific Lutheran University Rainier Writing Workshop and is co-founder of Two Sylvia's Press, as well as co-director of Poets on the Coast, a weekend writing retreat for women. Her book bio declares that she lives in a sleepy seaside town in Washington State and is an avid paddleboarder and hiker. Very cool. I'm grateful to have discovered her poetry and to have her with us today. Let's give a warm welcome to Kelly Russell Agodon.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Give me a good yes. Okay, great. Thank you all for coming out. Joyce, what a beautiful introduction. And so I'm thrilled to be here with Joyce and Rosalinda, who's behind the scenes here at Poetry Flash, and Sharon, someone who I have admired from afar and her work. I'm thrilled to be reading with you. Thank you so much for asking me and allowing me to be part of this and this community. So thank you. So I'm going to read for about 20 minutes. Read and talk seems to be what I do. I'm going to start with reading from the new book, Dialogues with Rising Tides, which came out from Copper Canyon Press. And having your book come out during a pandemic, it's hard enough to get any sort of, notice when you have a poetry book, but having it come out during a pandemic is like throwing a penny into the ocean. So I love that I'm still getting asked to do readings. It's really not that old. It came out in 2021, but actually that feels like 10 years ago. I've been struggling a lot and just emotionally, and there is a lot of anxiety in this book because I'm kind of wired that way, for good or bad. I mean, sometimes I think the best poets are wired with a little more anxiety or depression, and We can use it for our art. So this poem I'm going to read, I was in a particularly sad place, and I wrote this poem, and I did something I don't normally do, which was within a week of writing it, I sent it out to the New England Review, and they accepted it. And then I was horrified and thought, what have I done? But I'm sharing that with you just to say that I think sometimes when we put the more vulnerable parts of ourselves out into the world and be a little braver with the things that we might be afraid to talk about, like maybe we struggle with anxiety or depression, and we can use it in our art, that a lot of times that helps other people, or that's what I hope. This poem is called Braided Between the Broken. Today, apologies were falling from the trees, and the apples were being ignored. There's a chapter in our lives where we tried to shred pages, where we tried to rewrite the tale. Let's call that chapter the numbness, or the boredom, or the place where we forget we were alive. That morning, I woke up and wandered outside onto a back trail, past the no trespassing signs, into the arms of an evergreen or a black bear. It didn't matter who held me then. I was the moss, the lichen, the mushroom growing on the fallen log. No one expects perfection, except when they do, which is always. Even you, king of the quiet, crash when I talk about my brokenness. Cover up, your fractures are showing. In my life, I try to apologize for things I haven't done yet. Those are the bruised apples of me, the possible fruit rotting in a field. Remember when I kept replaying my melancholy? Remember when I opened our melody with a switchblade? Rip up the carpet, mow down the dahlias. Let's ruin our lives. It felt good to hurt then, until it didn't, until we were left with bad flooring, a garden where nothing grew. You're asking about the next chapter and the one after that. You're asking what time I'll be home and handing me a cloth to buff my halo. Let's put a comma here. Let's place a semicolon and think about the next sentence. I dream of erasers. I dream of whiteout. I dream of the song where the pharmacist doesn't judge me for not being able to make it through the day without some sort of pill. Then I sent it out into the world. I always believe if we can write about what hurt us, we take power over it. And if we can turn it into art, if I can turn my struggle or what I'm dealing with into art, I feel like I've won somehow. This is on a similar thought about having control and anxiety. And I believe for me, that's really where my anxiety, and many of us have an upkick of anxiety based on the pandemic, because we felt like we had so much loss of control and we didn't know what was coming next. This one is called At Times My Body Leans Towards Loss, and a thank you for Ilya Kaminsky for choosing it for an award, the Lyric Award for Poetry Society of America. At times my body leans towards loss. You didn't remember seeing the deer give birth on the highway. So when I said, I worry about things I can't control, you told me the pitchfork I carry in my mind stabs inward. Like the day was sun-filled, but what I saw was how I bumped a planter of Gerber daisies, and the moth fluttered up into the beak of a bird. Death and dinner, a minor accident, and something dies. Like the woman who drove to work crying in her car. When I saw her, she waved, a reflection in the glass, the good fortune of having a job to drive to, but the collision of sadness in the left ventricle of her heart. Who can hold a knife without thinking just for a second, which vein is most useful to slice into? Most everyone, you say, as you dull down the ends of my pitchfork. Most everyone, you say, as you unlock the door to our home. So the Poetry Society does a really good job of sharing poems, because this poem, my niece ended up reading. And you know, if you have family that doesn't normally read poetry, I just remember her saying, because of the knife part, I don't want to sit by you at Thanksgiving. I'm like, okay, you are obviously not my reader. I'm going to read one more out of here and then just read a few new pieces. And I'm just so excited to hear Sharon read. I was glad I was first, because then I don't have to think about my part and I just get to enjoy her. This is a poem. I think it's, if poets have like a free bird, you know, the poem, this is a poem that I get requested, which is a funny thing to have a request as a poet, but I like that, to have someone request a poem. And this poem is about how we're all, I hope most of us are trying there are people not trying their best as humans, but a lot of us are just trying our best. And sometimes we can witness people struggling in public places. And I'm always interested to see how we respond to that. If we respond in kindness and trying to help, or if we're like, you know, I'm getting out of here, I don't want any part of this. I hope we try to help when we can. This poem is called Magpies Recognize Themselves in the Mirror, which was inspired by an article I was reading, and it made me think about how we can recognize ourselves in others. Magpies recognize themselves in the mirror. The evening sounds like a murder of magpies, and we're replacing our cabinet knobs, because we can't change the world, but we can change our hardware. America breaks my heart some days, and some days it breaks itself in two. I watched a woman having a breakdown in the mall today, and when the security guard tried to help her, what I felt was all of us peeking from her purse as she threw it across the floor into Forever 21. And yes, the walls felt like another way to hold us. And when she finally stopped crying, I heard her say to the fluorescent lighting, "Someday the sky's too bright." And like that, we were her flock in our black coats and white sweaters. Some of us reaching our wings towards her, and some of us flying away. So some new work I'm going to read. I met this wonderful poet who I was hosting a reading for Two Sylvias Press for Saul Hernandez and Emmett Ezel. And we had a conversation at the end about birds that we're connected with. And I'm connected with a kingfisher. So if ever I need a sign, a kingfisher will show up. One even showed up when I was in the rainforests of Oregon on a river. And I was really questioning, because I had left my young kid to go there on a writing residency. And then I saw the kingfisher. So I'm someone who believes that animals interact with us, or things happen for a reason. And I went out on my paddleboard just in September. This is how new this poem is. And I thought I saw a pineapple floating, which made no sense to me. Why would there be a pineapple? So I paddled over to it. And what I realized was it was like a small baby owl, and its wings were up. So, and it was face down like it was flying. And I panicked and tried to save it, but it obviously had already been dead. And I didn't know what to do. So my partner was on shore and I was yelling, should I, get it and give it a burial, or what should I do? And, they said, just nature, just let it be, and something else will live off of it. It'll be nourishment for something else. So I tried to witness this owl and just be present for it. But it really shook me up. And I think about this owl so much. And so I've been writing about it, and it's hard to write about something hard. And a friend of mine said, some things are too sacred to write about. And I said, some things are so sacred, you must write about them. And so that's what I've came to. And I write prompts for Two Sylvias has this thing called a weekly muse, which shows up in your inbox. It's a subscription every Sunday, and it's got prompts and places to submit. And I practiced the prompts on myself to make sure they're good, but this allowed me to get into the poem, and it was to allow a past conversation about something important inform your poem. So you guys can also have that as a prompt for your next poem. But it allowed me to finally write about it. And I was emailing Emmett back and forth, and Emmett's asking, what do you think the owl meant? And I just didn't know. But I used Emmett's words at the end of this poem, which I actually believe is probably the most beautiful part of this poem, is their words. And if you haven't read any of Emma Diesel's work, they're an emerging poet and they are wonderful. So that was a long introduction to this shorter poem called You Ask What I Love More, Ghosts or Reality? And I answer, and this is for Emmett. In darker months, I misunderstand the cemetery as a sorrowful cocktail hour where we fall asleep on the graves engraved with the names of those we loved most. I'm going to start this over. You can take a deep breath. This is the first time I've read this, so you are the first to hear it. Okay, deep breath. You ask what I love most, ghost or reality, and I answer, in darker months, I misunderstand the cemetery as a sorrowful cocktail hour where we fall asleep on the graves engraved with the names of those we loved most. Can you believe a lifetime is just a paperclip holding our birth certificates to a cloud? Yes, that fragile. When I clutch despair, I forget how lucky I am. Everyone I love is alive. Like holding all your chips until the dealer says, honey, you need to place your bet. Put everything on black and close your eyes. In the darker months, the one sunny day says, keep going. I know you think I'm strong, but some days cocktail hour begins early when I find a baby owl drowned in the canal. How can I hold beauty and sorrow when winter is sliding its cold fingers down the back of my skirt? I could be silent, but when I told the poet who keeps a pair of wings on the altar, I see the baby owl each night I dream. They held compassion like a feather and said, even in death, in loss and relief, we float. Thank you for giving me the space and the grace to read that and allowing me to go back and start over. it's amazing the things that can just affect us and that we carry with us. So if you have something like that, try to get it out into a poem. I think I'm going to be writing the baby owl poem for a while, and it's like throwing spaghetti to a wall and seeing what sticks. This is a newer poem, and I met a baby giraffe, and it had been displaced because of the hurricane. And I'm always thinking about these animals and how we create these, what we call sanctuaries, and what really is a sanctuary. And are we keeping things safe? And just, I don't know, kind of us our big black boots as humans, just stomping around the world, hopefully trying to make things better as much as we can. And this is called "The World is Full of Lists of Animals That Keep Disappearing." And I find myself at a sanctuary with a baby giraffe who was rejected by his mother and displaced by a hurricane in Texas. I have never been so close to something so wild. As I pet its neck, the giraffe chirps like a small bird waiting in its nest for its mother to return. Mother Earth, mothership, motherboard with her son next to me, who keeps trying to find the perfect round stone on the dusty ground of the sanctuary. And I almost laugh at that term, sanctuary, what we call the places we created to save what we have injured, refuge, shelter, safe haven. And I look around and see nothing is safe here, like how everything is beautiful until you see the scuffs on the wall, the details of something so wild, not wanting to be held in. And I'm just going to read two more, and there are two more new ones, and the last one's upbeat. So, and this one has a funny title. Also, I guess when I say upbeat, that's always questionable. I have been called the blonde Morticia Adams, so I take that as a compliment. Okay, so this is actually true. The title is, if you type midlife into Google, the first word that comes up is crisis. Tell me how there's enough wisps of our lives to remain together when the milk of us becomes empty glasses left on the counter, a lingering night dried out with stars. There's an ambulance down the street, and you questioned whether it's coming to save us, while I thought about butterflies and their milk wings, how certain hummingbirds refuse to migrate. This winter, the forest trail was a belly dive into sunlight, and you wanted to kiss me in the misunderstanding. But I didn't stop looking at how bare the trees were while the mist circled us like lost birds, meaning we had no idea where we were. And then I'm going to close with this. The title is by a poet who I'm probably mispronouncing her name, Laura Kashkaisi. I don't know how to say it. I will type it into the chat, but she's a favorite poet of mine. Sometimes I watch her Zoom readings just so I can remember how to say her name, and I never can't. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. And this is what I want you to take away. The title is "The Secret is That the World Loves You." And on my best days, I do believe that. Right now I'm in that questioning period, but the secret is the world loves you. Because there is fluttering, when you thought there'd be floodwater, you trust a friend's hand on your hip while she spins satellites until the universe is full tilt of pinballing planets. But you've got your quarters ready against the glass, and while you exist in high water jeans, the world loves how you smile at sticky children, how when no one was noticing, you tucked 20 $20 into the hand of a stranger asking for change. Some days it's almost too easy to be helpful, to make a million friends because you're not spraying pesticides across your lawn. And the grasshoppers and cocoons thank you. And while you aim to unwind with hibiscus, hollyhocks, anything that gives you a little buzz, you really adore the honeybees, how their wings flicker and whir. And today the cliff swallows returned, and a pair of golden eyes you love floated across the lake. They're still together another year. Seasonal monogamy. We're hanging on, we're hanging in there, knowing love is love and is love, and also temporary, like all of us that summer where everything fluttered, all those afternoons, the monarchs landed in our hair. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kelly Russell Agodon. That was just amazing. Thank you. I'm very grateful to learn about the baby owl, and which I will also be thinking about. And it was an amazing reading. Thank you so much. And I'm absolutely delighted next to introduce Sharon Dolin. Sharon Dolin has read for Poetry Flash before in person, way back in the before times at Cody's Books in Berkeley and at Mo's Books in Berkeley in 2016. And I'm absolutely delighted to have her back with us. She's a pure poet who places her words precisely. Her new book is Imperfect Present. It brings in racial unrest, identity, sexual abuse, and even the plastic question. In these poems, Sharon Dolin reports on our inner selves in this new now. Ellen Bass says, there are many ways to describe Sharon Dolin's new collection of poems. Delightful, earthy, erudite, engaging, but dazzling says it best. A master of form, Dolin offers a prismatic, often intimate look at origins, language, country, belief, the self. And Natasha Trethewey says, Imperfect Present is a stunning book, not simply for its depth of feeling, piercing wit, and well-earned wisdom, but also for the brilliant play of language, the sheer sonic pleasures of it. Sharon Dolin's previous books include Manual for Living, Whirlwind, and Burn and Dodge, winner of the AWP Donald Hall Prize in Poetry. She's also the author of a prose memoir, Hitchcock Blonde, and 2 books of translation by Catalan poet Gemma Gorga. Sharon Dolin is a 2021 National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship recipient, Fulbright Scholar, Pushcart Prize winner, and recipient of a Witter-Binner Fellowship from the Library of Congress. She lives in New York City, where she is associate editor of Barrow Street Press. Please give a warm Poetry Flash jazz hands welcome for Sharon Dolin.
Wow. I assume you can hear me.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Joyce. It's such a pleasure to read for Poetry Flash and to read with Kelly. And I'm just thrilled to be here. I see friends and I see other people I don't know. And so I'm gonna launch right in and read the poem from which the title is taken. And it's called Make Your Home in the Imperfect Present. All you need to know is that I invoke the name of Moses, one of the etymologies of his name. Make your home in the imperfect present. How many times have you thought, this is not it? When will my true life begin? How many times have you awakened to one more stage rehearsal for the main event that never seems to happen? If this is it, the tablets of your life broken, then reconstituted, so instead of God writing, a stuttering human whose name means drawn from water, incised the words you live by. If this imperfect, not as you had expected, is the show, if all your life could be lived in the improvised now, like the time you were awakened early in Bologna, brought before a class, unprepared as you were to read and speak, and because you had no time for anxiety to take your breath away, you stood and read and spoke into the moment. If all your mistakes are not retakes filed away for the perfect cut, but the mosaic you are building from the shattered pieces of some inconceivable whole. So the next poem I want to read is a poem that's part serious, part tongue-in-cheek. I don't think you need to know anything else about it. It's called If I Told You. If I told you I am Roma, if I told you I am named after my great-grandmother Sabina, and that Sabina is a Romany name, if I told you there is no DNA marker for Roma, but I believe my people are Jewish Roma. If I told you I feel Roma in my blood when I watch flamenco, and I have a common Roma blood type. If I know how to speak every Romance language but Romanian, and my Romanian American grandmother, who knew no Yiddish, knew how to say, cum va place, how do you like it, in Romanian. If I told you that proves nothing and everything. If I told you I am related to a Hollywood gangster on my Romanian side, and you probably believe Roma are gangster thieves. If I told you I am a thief and I am stealing my Roma identity. If I have never begged for a coin, never sat outside a subway or train station, though once stranded in Boston, asked strangers for a bed, ended up on a bench in the police station. If I told you I slept in a tent or under the canopy of stars, if the rhythms of my clapping are Roma and my people are from Iași in Moldova, in eastern Romania, if I told you Roma played at Jewish weddings and Jews played at Roma weddings, yet during the Iași pogrom of June 1941, Romani were caught laughing as they helped the Nazis. If this is when I have my doubts about being Roma. If I told you the Romani part of me believes only in song and the Jewish part insists on writing it down. If I told you some Romani have light eyes and hair like mine. If I told you that part of me never feels at home and that part is a Romani Jew. That being an outcast once, why not be an outcast twice? I'm not going to read the plastic poem, but I will read this poem that is from an article from it was a New York Times article I read, and it's in the context of women and our having autonomy over our bodies, and this is probably one of the saddest of cases. And it's called How Many Secrets? I don't know her name, the Chandigarh girl, who was raped by her uncle. And I don't know that just because I too was once a 10-year-old in braids, that I have any right to speak of her. But who will speak for her? She who had no right to her body, or to know that what bumped up inside her was not a kidney stone. If it is true we all begin as female before testosterone washes through the womb to make some of us male, isn't she close to being the mother of us all? At 6 months pregnant, denied an abortion by the Indian court, denied to her parents, that is, who have not told the girl she was pregnant, who now has had the baby cut from her as she lay in numbed sleep, the baby girl unseen by her or by her parents. Why did she finally tell them about her uncle, her stomach pains a month earlier? What did she make of the heaviness of her breasts? Now I see her stitched up belly healing. How she'll have to go on when her whole life things have been done to her, for her. Now I can see her married off at 15, the stomach pains returning, when the anesthesia of not knowing wears off. Let her mouth unstitch itself, even if it means knowing she has survived one cycle of suffering, only to be born into another. I don't know why I'm shaking a little, but I guess that's a good thing. So we're in the season of buying things, right? We're such consumers, especially this time of year. So I thought I'd read this poem, which I have not read out loud from this book. It's called Black Leather Backpack. I buy one. I return one. I buy another. I return it. This goes on all fall. My hunger unsated, my thirst unslaked. I try the zippers, the drawstrings, adjust the straps with and without silver buckles, unsnap its pockets, having nothing to fill them with except the desire to extinguish this desire to be filled, until I am wrung clear of it and carry myself forward, a container for the uncontainable. So Kelly was talking about poets being anxious or depressed. So this is a poem I was thinking about various poets who died, some of them having committed suicide or been killed. So yeah, it's really upbeat. And it has, its title is taken from a poem of Yehuda Amichai's, from part of the book of Open, Closed, Open. And the title is The Loneliness of His Death, the Death of His Loneliness. I like to think there's a place where all the poets go who died too young. They're lounging together on rattan chairs like those in limbo. The suicides, the cancer-riven, the bulleted, sharing lines and demi-tasses of absinthe espresso. Now that nothing is forbidden, they talk freely of their lives below. How this one would have remarried, that one would have shot him instead. They hear their lines repeated backwards to them, garbled as through a barrel of water. I loved him to death. He was the death of my love. To roam on rooftops occurred to me. Oh, the ochre rooftops of Rome. Here they pair up and imagine alternate deaths, alternate lives. She takes his hand and they jump from the hood of one cloud to the next, compressing their spirit bones that won't break. Arriving in slow procession all afternoon, the poems they had no time to write. A lion pads over to scratch the lines of his extinction in the dirt. A man whose saffron chest ribs form a body harp invites her to thrum her song through him. O time of my despair, in my next life, may I be spared by time. So I'm not sure I'm reading any of my poems about the social unrest. I'm going to move on to some ekphrastic poems, which for those of you who don't know are poems that are in dialogue with works of art. There's a series in here called Trilogy of Doubt, which is connected to a series of paintings I saw in Barcelona by a contemporary Catalan painter named Lita Cabellut, whose painting is on the cover of the book, though the painting is not from that series. But I think she's an amazing artist. And this poem is also a gram of Anne's, which was a form that Terence Hayes invented, in which the last words of each line, which I'll try to emphasize so you hear them, are composed of letters from the title. The only letters they're allowed to use are from the title, so they're partial anagrams. And the title of the poem is Doubtful. Oh, there's a lot of explanation for a really tiny poem. And Luftmensch is sometimes a word people don't know. It's German and Yiddish for air person, airhead, you know, the opposite of somebody who's very grounded. And the Franz in here is thinking of Franz Kafka, who was probably the greatest Luftmensch. Okay, doubtful. Isn't that the way you run afoul of ambition? What's left to say, you flub, submerge inside another gloomy bout of blank face, page tasteless as tofu. You thought you took after France, Luftmensch, who floated words on ether to flout diurnal clocks and write till dawn, then fold into bed, a crumpled up page. Now blot it out, sprinkle in lavender, rose hips by the tubful. And I'll read you another poem from this series. I'm going to read you a few poems from the series. This one is called Doubtful Profile. What answer lies in looking? What contour can I draw when I have forgotten how to see without seeing through? Forgotten silence amplifies the mind's own thrumming. Forgotten to let this screen mesh, this smoke smudge the view. Forgotten that to entrance goes both ways. What I enter enters me. Forgotten, failure is a new kind of hope. This is another one I have. These are poems that I have not read at other readings. It's fun to read a few different things. This is called Three-Quarter View. Go where you are drawn, cracks on your cheek and jaw, where the veins break through. What if nothing protects, not shuttered lids, rose-colored robe, not lips horned, continuous black, head humbled by your eggshell cap? What if Interiority secretes meaning in the hidden quarter, leaving us your shroud, scored by time's brushstroke, your unfathomable nose. So there are a lot of different sections in here. I draw my inspiration from different sources. I'm going to read now from the section called Oblique Strategies. And the title comes from a series of cards that Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt created actually way back in the 70s. You can still find them online. I was able to get, I like the physical cards. And what they were instructions that you would pick a card at random if let's say his musical group was having trouble figuring out what to do next. So this was meant to jumpstart the creativity. And I used them to jumpstart my creativity, and I wrote poems off of them. And so all of the titles are taken from these cards. You know, they're just, sometimes they're one word, sometimes they're very short instructions. So I'm going to read a few of these. This is called Turn It Upside Down. As in your life, in what you hold, what you push away, the feet have their own kind of mind. Like a child's painting, red stabs on blue look devil one way, spikes of abstract fire when flipped. Someone says, race, and you start to run. Someone says, immigrant sundown, and forgets to write home. Someone says, stranger, and checks their surname at the door. Someone says, wall, and forgets their own great who scaled them all. This is called Emphasize the Flaws. And it's a run-on from the title into the poem. Emphasize the flaws and not the laws. All art is going off the track to make a new track. What you depart from becomes the art. Mockingbird stealing song and seeds. Now you're raiding the nest, whereas once you were afraid to nest. And what if you are nothing but flaws? Your life a sum of broken parts. Be bricolage and forage for weeds. The name marks something like you growing in the wrong place. I enjoy reading these. They're fun for me, and they were fun to write. But, well, you know, difficult also, obviously. This one is called The Most Important is Most Easily Forgotten. Lean toward the lacunae. Already out of mind, can dream revive? You thought you knew who the self was. Soul overlapping multitude, vertical, horizontal planes of being. The body bears no single chronology. You wept, you slept, you shed skin and hair. The self touched a decade ago, no longer there. If this be the blank in the story, if this space alone, saucy boss of the moment, be a container. If you have always looked up where letters, freed from the blissful tyranny of words, mingle, singular, dance, touching, only air. Okay, I want to read this one. This is especially for the poets out there. The thrill of this poem was getting to write this particular Greek word into a poem. And I can't tell you how how much of my afternoon while walking the dog I spent practicing how to say it, because I've been saying it wrong. I looked it up, and actually there's somebody, at least one person here who knows ancient Greek, and I thought the word was boustrophodon. And then I looked it up, and everybody online says boustrophodon. So I've been like boustrophodon, trying to say it right. But maybe I like boustrophodon better. But anyway, I love having a poem with this mouthful of syllables in there. And what it means is there was ancient Greek poetry that was written from right to left and left to right. And the word, the etymology of the word is actually, it's an ox. You imagine an ox plowing, right? So this movement forward, and so because the title of the poem is Reverse. So I just loved having a poem with this word in it. And otherwise, it's an etymology poem. It has a lot of etymologies in it of reverse. Reverse could be reverse, as in remake the line. Verse being first, boustrophodon. Ox plowing right to left, then left to right, or else to turn around. Old French reverser, which is a different path than the way forward. To revert is to go back to the once unseen verdant. Versus being against, vertebrae from vertex, vortex, and vertigo. Your bendable spines swirling fall into elastic time, divorced until you arise, vertical, and return backward to where you had begun. I see some of you liked it. Moving right along, I'm going to read from this section called From the Dream Notebooks. And this is the first poem in the section, one of my favorites. And it did come from a dream. And it has a word here which you might not know, especially if you're not Jewish and you don't go to synagogue, etc. It's Aleinu, which is the name of an old prayer, and Aleinu is the first word of the prayer, and it means it's incumbent upon us. And the next words are to praise God. And in the middle, towards the beginning of this prayer, there's also a moment where one bows. All of that will make sense when you hear the poem. My life as an open air temple. From cramped to roofless, I became, I don't know how, an open air temple with no pillars. My walls of stone lichen covered, where many feet came to pray. The willows shook around me as mice and small insects knelt in moonlight. I could feel the breath of many spirits winging through my chamber. Rabbis dropping pocket lint, specks of letters, their devotional thumbs rubbed off prayers, peppered the air as lithe women led the service of dancing. I saw the specks drifting into place, magnetized into Ayin, Lamed, Yud, Nun, Vav, Aleinu, wafting in air, and I arose within my life and bowed. Obviously, those are the Hebrew letters that make up the word. A lot of the poems in this section are, they take as their inspiration lines from the Babylonian Talmud, which in one section has a lot to say about dreams. So the titles again are taken from there, as this one, which is, I have dreamt a dream and I do not know what it is. Awakening to blankness, to snow on my pillow, my head due north. The tidal waves have gone, and the sky of black fish, sea of bare trees. In the wake of another storm, glass-paned with invisible priests forming the triangle of blessing with their hands, may I ask, before the curtains dissolve into ink and the wind slant severs day from night, what was I dreaming? Before the coat of gray wakeful casts fill me with freshets where salamanders, black and orange flecked, writhe in the fire. Let me see on my wall that spectrum ablaze. I think I'm just going to read one more poem from this book, and then I was going to read a few new poems. I hope I didn't see when I began, but I hope that's okay. So this is the final poem in the book, which is called Two Stones, and it relates something about the stones. I just want you to know, I didn't make this up. It actually, Martin Buber talks about this in the Tales of the Hasidim, the Later Masters. So it's something that I took from there. And it also, you'll hear a little bit of Beckett in here as well as in Samuel. Okay. Two stones. I keep despair in my pocket like a sucking stone I can pull out at any moment. Oh, in the morning it lies on my tongue when I can't get out of bed, reminding me I am nothing but dust, nothing but loose grains of sand, unable to compress myself into a form that rises and sings praises. Until I recall that other stone I keep in my other pocket, the one that intones, "For you the world was made." How can I retrieve this other stone? The stone of faith and self-belief, and moisten it on my tongue? Is it caught inside the shofar I am straining to blow? Spurt of pebble sound. How is it a stone, a clenched bundle of minerals, can loosen into particles of moan that stream out, awaken, arise, atone, return? This poem was written at the time of the Jewish New Year. So I wanted to close with some new poems, with three new poems. And this first one, I've been thinking a lot. We're in fall. We're still in fall. It's a very rich, resonant season. And again, I'm always thinking about etymologies and thinking about this season compared to the other seasons. That's all you need to know, because you'll hear some etymologies. You'll hear other languages, but I explain them. Okay. To fall. Why do you alone have two names? As though to denote what leaves do were not enough to capture your blousy, your bounty, your lingering nights. Oh, autumn, a word of dubious origin. No one really knows where you come from. Originally, you were simply harvest time. In Lithuanian, you are ruduo, for reddish. In Catalan, tardo, from the Latin to be late, tardy, as though to remind me to get busy, as tardo is what I see inside of me. It is getting late in my life, and I, unlike Keats's poppy-drowsed thresher, must hurry to gather in this yield of cranberries and russet apples, to find late love before I, too, am shorn and shucked of everything. Some of you know I got a new dog. He's being very good. He's asleep under the dining room table. And this poem is addressed to him. And it's also a poem that I wrote because I learned a new word. So that's the reason to write a poem, isn't it? It's called Ode to Splooting. Actually, my dentist taught me this word. I don't know how it came up, but that's who taught me the word. Ode to Splooting. Scientists call it heat dumping. What squirrels do in August, splayed on their bellies so they look dead or else ready to fly. What you do, stretching out your back legs and lying belly down in the cool grass, or increasingly in the mud. Even indoors, you sploot under my bed on the wooden floor to sleep. You with your shaggy white fur. What's the origin of the word sploot? From splat? Or is it a portmanteau of splay and scoot? There you are, splooting, panting, and hoping for a reprieve from this heat, even in fall, as we humans layer up and hug our arms to keep warm. It would take such heat, I hope never to feel, before I, too, would get down on the ground, splay-legged, hugging the earth. And as the planet is getting warmer, we may all be splooting. Who knows? Okay, this is the final poem, and it's something of an ars poetica. And I realized, gee, you know, if Kelly lives, I feel like much more in nature. This is like an urban pastoral poem, but whatever. All right, it's called The Gleaners. And formally, I played around with increasing the stanza length. So it's 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, going up to 8 lines, as though it's collecting as it's going along. The Gleaners. They appear every Friday. This Friday in blue translucent raincoats, one with a party-colored umbrella strapped to his forehead, as they work in the rain, spending hours sorting through our garbage to find plastic bottles, glass beer bottles, aluminum soda cans, until by evening they have amassed sack after large sack full, and now wait in the rain for the white unmarked truck to arrive, when they hoist their sacks into the back and take the damp bills home with them. I wave to them as I go by. Sometimes they set aside a lamp, a chair, some discarded trinket they keep. A few blocks over, I watch a group of school children in their woolens and down jackets gather sticks and fallen branches to build a lean-to against the tree near the playground. The tallest girl directs the others. They keep building despite it being a fragile structure. The windy rain topples over, so the next day they begin again, knowing they will never have to shelter inside its scant space. Still, they want to create a fort, a haven hidden in plain sight, seeing how sturdy they can make it, this time by weaving the sticks together to withstand another windy day. And what have I done with my life but collect the dregs of experiences, memories, remnants of dreams, and fashion them into stanzas, so I, as Amichai said poets do, experience things twice. How different am I from the gleaners, looking for value in what others throw away, and crafting this sacred space, line by line, until on the page a refuge appears for any reader who happens by. Thank you.
Thank you.
I could hear you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was such a pleasure, such a wonderful reading. This whole event has been just amazing. I'm so grateful. Sharon Dolin, Kelly, Russell, Agodon, thank you so much for your words. And thanks to Rosalinda Monroy, who's our tech support today here at Poetry Flash. And also check out these wonderful books. They are at bookshop.org/shop/poetryflash. You will see them there and be able to order them. And just, as you would any other of the many services that we have, but this one is a good one. You can feel good about purchasing your book from bookshop.org/shop/poetryflash. And thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who logged on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.